I never imagined that my college years would be marred by betrayal and a thirst for revenge so potent that it would redefine my understanding of loyalty. Living in a cramped second-story apartment with my few cherished roommates, I assumed that the most significant drama in my life would revolve around finals and late-night pizza runs. Instead, fate had woven a darker, more intricate tapestry that would challenge every notion of trust I held dear. The early part of the semester was unremarkable. I had just moved into our modest college apartment, a place that, while small, was filled with the promise of independence and discovery. The hallways smelled of old wood and youthful ambition, and the echoes of laughter in the common areas reassured me that I was exactly where I was meant to be. It was in this setting that I met Ella, my girlfriend, whose bright smile and infectious laughter had quickly captured my heart. I believed we shared a bond that was unbreakable, forged in the heat of first love and mutual dreams of the future. Every morning, I would wake up with a sense of excitement, ready to face another day of classes and late-night study sessions. Ella was always by my side, at least in my mind. Our apartment had become a sanctuary from the chaos of college life. Yet, beneath the surface of our blissful routine, subtle cracks began to appear. I started noticing that Ella's texts became more secretive, and she would occasionally excuse herself for study sessions that lasted far longer than necessary. At first, I dismissed these incidents as the normal ebbs and flows of a busy college relationship. But deep inside, a small voice warned me that something was amiss. One Thursday afternoon, I had a particularly grueling class in modern philosophy, a subject that often left my mind wandering in search of meaning. The professor's words blurred into the background as I struggled to keep pace with my racing thoughts. I was preoccupied with an unsettling feeling that had been growing over the past few weeks. Little did I know, the universe was preparing to deliver a blow that would shatter my naive illusions of fidelity. Returning to the apartment after class, I expected to see the usual cheerful welcome from Ella. Instead, I was greeted by an eerie silence. The apartment was dimly lit, and a sense of foreboding crept over me as I entered the living room. There, I caught a glimpse of movement near the window, a fleeting shadow that seemed out of place. My heart began to pound, and an inexplicable chill ran down my spine. I rationalized the moment as mere exhaustion, a trick of the light perhaps, and tried to dismiss the uneasy feeling. However, that night, as I lay awake in the quiet darkness of our shared room, I couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that something was terribly wrong. My mind replayed every moment, every whispered phone call, every glance that might have concealed a hidden truth. I resolved that I would not confront Ella just yet. Instead, I would gather evidence and wait for the truth to reveal itself. I was determined to understand the full extent of whatever betrayal was brewing in the shadows of our apartment. And so, with a heart heavy with uncertainty, I set out on a path that would lead me into the depths of deception. That night, lying in silence, I vowed to uncover every secret hidden in the corners of our apartment. I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. My life was changing. Over the following days, my anxiety grew as I discreetly observed every interaction between Ella and our neighbor Jason, the quiet guy who lived next door. I had always seen him as a polite, unassuming fellow, someone who kept to himself and maintained a low profile. But now, my suspicions morphed into a dread that was impossible to ignore. Every time I passed his door, I felt a gnawing discomfort in my gut, as if the walls themselves were conspiring to hide a truth that I desperately needed to confront. I began to piece together a timeline in my mind, recalling moments when Ella had been unusually distant, or when she would laugh at messages on her phone as if sharing a private joke with someone. The evidence was subtle, but it was there. Fleeting glances, whispered phone conversations that ceased as soon as I entered the room, and the way her behavior shifted when I wasn't around. I spent hours poring over text messages, searching for any hint that would validate my growing suspicions. It was during one of these long nights that I discovered a series of messages between Ella and Jason. The words were innocent enough at first, filled with casual banter and friendly remarks, but as I scrolled further, a more intimate tone began to surface. They talked about meeting up, sharing secrets, and even mentioned a time and place that coincided with one of my classes. The realization hit me like a freight train. I was not the only one in her life, and the betrayal stung more deeply than I could have imagined. My initial shock turned to a cold, steely resolve. I felt a burning need to know the full extent of the treachery and so I decided to set up a small surveillance operation. I installed a discreet camera in the living room, one that captured a wide-angle view of the hallway and the front door. Every night, I watched the recordings with a mixture of horror and grim determination. The footage confirmed what I had feared: Ella and Jason meeting late at night, sharing secretive smiles, and engaging in behaviors that left no doubt about their intimate connection. It wasn't just a fleeting encounter, it was a full-blown affair, conducted in the shadows of our supposedly safe haven. My heart broke a little more with each replay, and anger simmered beneath the surface. The betrayal hit even harder when I learned that my best friend, Mark, had been kept in the dark. I couldn't fathom how someone in my inner circle could allow such deception. Learning that Mark's girlfriend had discovered the affair and promptly kicked Ella out of the apartment only deepened my sense of betrayal and humiliation. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, I found myself questioning every aspect of my relationship with Ella. The memories of our happy times now felt tainted by the knowledge of her deceit. I spent long, sleepless nights replaying every moment, every conversation, searching for signs that I had missed. The apartment, once a symbol of hope and new beginnings, had transformed into a stage for betrayal. I felt like a spectator in my own life, powerless to stop the tragic unfolding of events. Yet, even in the depths of my despair, a spark of resolve began to take shape. I was not the type to be a victim, and I vowed that if I was to be wronged, I would not let it pass without retribution. I meticulously gathered every piece of evidence, screenshots of incriminating texts, timestamps from the camera footage, and even audio recordings of hushed conversations. I compiled everything into a detailed dossier, a testament to the truth that had been so obscured by lies. With every new discovery, my determination grew stronger. I was no longer just a betrayed lover. I was a man on a mission, and that mission was clear: to exact a revenge that would leave no doubt about the consequences of betrayal. I knew that confronting Ella would be inevitable, but the manner in which I planned to do it was something I had been carefully crafting over the course of these agonizing weeks. I knew I had reached a turning point. With every piece of evidence in hand, I steeled myself for the confrontation that would set my course for irrevocable revenge and finally end my suffering, and all to witness. In the days that followed, the weight of my discovery pressed down on me like an anchor, dragging me into a vortex of anger and self-loathing. I avoided eye contact with Ella, and my normally cheerful greetings were replaced with curt nods. The apartment, once a place of sanctuary, now felt like a prison of betrayal. Every room echoed with the ghosts of our shared memories, each one a painful reminder of the trust I had so foolishly placed in someone who was anything but loyal. I began to observe not just Ella's actions, but also the subtle interactions between her and Jason. It became increasingly clear that their connection was not a series of random encounters, but a deliberate, calculated affair. I overheard whispered conversations in the dead of night, and once, by pure chance, I caught them in the act. They were in the living room when I returned unexpectedly early from class. The scene was frozen in time. The way Ella hesitated for a heartbeat before reaching out to Jason, the way their eyes locked in a silent acknowledgement of their betrayal. In that moment, the facade of normalcy shattered completely, leaving nothing but the cold, hard truth laid bare before me. Fueled by a mix of despair and a burning need for retribution, I began to devise a plan. I spent hours alone in my room, drafting every possible scenario of how I could confront Ella and expose her treachery. I knew that a simple confrontation would not suffice. I needed to make her understand the gravity of her actions, to force her to feel even a fraction of the pain she had inflicted on me. My mind raced with images of her face contorting in shock and regret, the sounds of her desperate pleas for forgiveness echoing in the hollow corridors of my heart. But forgiveness was not an option. I was determined to ensure that she would suffer the consequences of her betrayal. I decided that the first step in my plan would be to expose her indiscretions publicly in a way that left no room for denial or escape. I carefully curated all the evidence I had gathered over the past few weeks, creating a digital portfolio of her deceit. I knew that the college had strict policies against infidelity and misconduct, and I planned to present my findings to the Student Disciplinary Board. The idea of watching her reputation crumble, of seeing her shunned by the very community she once belonged to, gave me a perverse satisfaction. I imagined her walking through campus with her head held low, a pariah among her peers, while I stood in silent vindication, knowing that justice had been served. Yet, as I meticulously plotted my next move, an unexpected development threw a wrench into my plans. Mark, my best friend, approached me one afternoon with a mix of concern and curiosity in his eyes. He had somehow pieced together fragments of the truth, and his own investigations had led him to confront Ella. I could see the conflict written across his face: loyalty to a friend versus the need for honesty. In that moment, Mark confessed that he had already been in touch with Ella's ex, who had been privy to some of the darker aspects of her past. This revelation not only confirmed my worst fears, but also added a new dimension to the betrayal. It seemed that Ella's pattern of deceit was not limited to her affair with Jason. She had a history of manipulating those around her, leaving a trail of broken hearts and shattered trust in her wake. The confrontation with Mark was a turning point. We spent hours talking in hushed tones in the campus cafe, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on both of us. Mark's anguish was palpable as he recounted his own experiences of being deceived by someone he once trusted implicitly. I found solace in his words, even as my resolve to seek revenge hardened further. We agreed that the path forward was clear. There would be no reconciliation, no second chances. The betrayal had cut too deeply, and any attempt at forgiveness would only serve to diminish the gravity of the crime committed. As the days turned into nights, I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation with Ella. I rehearsed my lines, each word a carefully sharpened weapon meant to wound her conscience. I would not be swayed by tears or feigned remorse. She had already shown her true colors. My plan was simple yet ruthless: to force her to confront the full measure of her betrayal in a setting where there could be no escape, no safe haven. I envisioned a public forum where I would present the evidence with unyielding precision, leaving Ella utterly exposed and condemned by the relentless judgment of our community for all to witness. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than I anticipated. I had arranged a meeting with the Student Disciplinary Board in a small conference room on campus. My hands trembled as I set up my presentation, a digital dossier that contained every piece of evidence I had painstakingly gathered. The room was stark and impersonal, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glow over the table. As I waited for the board members to arrive, I replayed the events in my mind, each memory a searing reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. When the board finally convened, I could feel the weight of every eye in the room, even though they were strangers to me. I began my presentation with a steady voice, detailing the timeline of events, the incriminating messages, and the hidden recordings that captured Ella's indiscretions. I made sure to articulate every detail with precision, leaving no room for ambiguity. The atmosphere grew tense as I displayed screenshots of text messages and snippets of video footage. It was as if the room itself was recoiling from the magnitude of the deception. As I spoke, I noticed the mix of emotions on the faces of the board members: disbelief, indignation, and even a hint of satisfaction at the unraveling of a web of lies. I explained how the evidence clearly demonstrated that Ella had not only betrayed me, but had also manipulated those around her, including my best friend Mark. I recounted the moment I had caught her with Jason, the way the light had revealed everything, and the crushing realization that my entire world was built on lies. Every word was a catharsis, a release of the pent-up rage that had been simmering inside me for weeks. When I finished, there was a heavy silence. One of the board members, a stern woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward and asked, "What do you expect to happen now?" I replied without hesitation that I sought not only disciplinary action, but also a complete public exposure of Ella's actions. I insisted that such betrayal could not go unpunished, and that her name should be permanently tarnished in the annals of our college's history. The board members exchanged glances, and I sensed that my fate was sealed, that justice would be served as unequivocally as the evidence before them. Over the next few days, the repercussions of my presentation began to unfold with a relentless momentum. Word spread quickly through the campus grapevine, and soon the scandal was the talk of every dormitory, classroom, and dining hall. Students whispered in hushed tones about the fallen figure who had once been admired, and my own feelings of vindication grew with every retelling of the sordid tale. I watched from a distance as Ella was confronted by professors and administrators, her excuses falling flat in the face of irrefutable evidence. The news even reached Mark, who, though pained by the betrayal, could no longer deny the truth. His eyes, once filled with trust and brotherly affection, now held a mixture of sorrow and resignation. We met briefly on campus, an awkward silence hanging between us as he offered a single word of regret. There was no anger in his tone, only the quiet acceptance of a lesson learned the hard way. In that moment, I realized that while I had orchestrated the exposure of Ella's deceit, the damage was irrevocable, and nothing could restore the innocence I had once believed in. My plan for revenge, however, was far from over. The disciplinary board's decision was a public one, and it served as a rallying cry for those who had been wronged by Ella's manipulations. I became a reluctant figurehead for the cause of truth and accountability on campus. Groups of students approached me, seeking guidance and sharing their own tales of betrayal and abuse of trust. They told me how Ella had left a trail of broken promises and shattered dreams, and in their eyes, I saw a reflection of my own pain. Their solidarity fueled my determination to ensure that no one else would fall prey to her deceptive charm. In the wake of the scandal, I took further steps to secure my future and protect myself from any lingering shadows of the past. I transferred to another campus, far from the echoes of the college apartment that had once been my sanctuary. The move was not merely an escape, it was a rebirth. I vowed never to allow myself to be entangled in such a web of deceit again. The memory of that fateful day remained etched in my mind as both a cautionary tale and a catalyst for my transformation. I had learned that betrayal, once uncovered, demands a response that is both calculated and unyielding, and I had delivered mine in full measure. That day marked the end of an era defined by betrayal and the beginning of a future built on self-respect and relentless retribution. I walked away from that meeting with a sense of grim satisfaction, knowing that my carefully executed plan had set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the lives of those who had betrayed me. It was a victory born of pain, and I embraced it fully. Every step I took felt like reclaiming a part of my soul that had been stolen.